A broke student let a stranger use his phone. Unaware, she was a millionaire who'd later call him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to today's story. The next few days passed in a blur for Ethan. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman who had borrowed his phone at the bus stop. There was something about her, something in the way she had smiled, in the way she had thanked him that felt different. He had helped people before, but this felt meaningful. Still, he pushed the thought out of his mind. He had too many problems of his own to focus on something as fleeting as a chance encounter with a stranger. With student loans piling up and the pressure of his final exams looming, Ethan barely had time for anything beyond survival. He woke up early, worked late, and fell into bed exhausted each night. He was used to the routine, but that didn't make it any easier. Every day felt like he was running a race he would never win. The weight of his financial worries was always there, gnawing at him. That is, until one morning, just as he was heading to class, his phone buzzed with a message. It was an unknown number. Hi, this is Clara. We met at the bus stop last week. I hope you're doing well. Would you like to meet up for coffee? I owe you one. Ethan froze. Clara, the woman who had borrowed his phone. He didn't know what to think. Why was she reaching out now? Was she just being polite, or was there something more? His mind raced with questions, but curiosity got the better of him. He quickly typed out a reply, agreeing to meet her. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop later that afternoon. Ethan had no idea what to expect, but he couldn't deny the flutter of excitement in his chest. When he arrived at the coffee shop, Clara was already sitting at a table by the window. She looked different, more polished than the last time he had seen her. Her coat was stylish, her hair was perfectly done, and she seemed relaxed. She smiled as she saw him walk in. Ethan, right? She said, standing up to greet him. It's so good to see you again. Yeah, it's me, he replied, feeling a bit out of place. He had never been the kind of person who could easily blend into high-class settings, and Clara's appearance made him feel even more like an outsider. He sat down across from her, trying to push aside the nerves building up in his chest. Clara wasted no time getting to the point. I've been thinking about our brief conversation at the bus stop, she said, her voice calm and warm. You were so kind to let me use your phone. I wanted to do something to repay you. Ethan raised an eyebrow, unsure of what she meant. Repay me, he asked. It was nothing. I just helped out. Clara smiled. You'd be surprised how rare it is to find someone willing to help out without expecting anything in return. I think that's something worth rewarding. Ethan felt his heart race. What was she talking about? Was this some kind of joke? But Clara continued. I run a foundation, and we've been looking for someone with your skills. I know it might sound strange, but I think you could be a good fit for an opportunity we have. Ethan was stunned. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Are you serious? He asked, his voice shaky. I mean, I'm just a student. I don't have any special skills. Clara shook her head. That's where you're wrong. You have the right qualities, humility, kindness, and a strong sense of responsibility. That's more valuable than anything you could learn in a classroom. Ethan couldn't believe it. A foundation? An opportunity to work with her? It felt like something out of a dream. He had never imagined his life could change so quickly, especially not after a simple act of kindness. I don't know what to say, he murmured. This is a lot to take in. Clara smiled softly. You don't have to decide right away. Think about it. Just know that the offer is there if you want it. Ethan sat back in his chair, trying to process everything she had just said. It was overwhelming, but at the same time, it was the first time in a long time that he had felt like something was going his way. I will, he said finally, his voice steady now. I'll think about it. Clara nodded. Take your time. And no matter what you decide, I'm glad we met. As she stood up to leave, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe this was the break he had been waiting for, the opportunity to change his life. But even if it wasn't, he was grateful for one thing. His life had just taken a turn for the better, and that was more than he had ever expected. He watched Clara leave the coffee shop, her confident stride disappearing into the bustling street. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a while, he felt like it might just be something worth looking forward to. The next few days were a whirlwind for Ethan. He couldn't stop thinking about his meeting with Clara. The more he thought about it, the more surreal it all felt. A foundation? An opportunity to work with her? It was like a dream. But the more he thought about it, the more he wondered if he was just getting his hopes up. He had always been the kind of person who played it safe, kept his expectations low so he wouldn't be disappointed. But this time, something felt different. He had been working so hard for so long, trying to balance his studies, his part-time job, and his never-ending list of bills. The thought of a real opportunity, something that could change his life, was almost too much to comprehend. He kept telling himself that he didn't deserve it, that he wasn't qualified for a job at her foundation. He had no experience in the field, no fancy degree, just the work ethic his parents had taught him growing up. But every time he thought about it, his heart would race. Maybe this was his chance, his break. A few days later, Clara called again. This time, she asked him to meet her at the foundation's office for an interview. Ethan was nervous. He wasn't sure what to expect. What kind of questions would she ask? What if she realized he wasn't cut out for it? But he knew he had to take the leap. He couldn't pass up this chance. When he arrived at the office, Clara greeted him warmly and led him inside. The building was modern, sleek, and clean, a stark contrast to the tiny apartment Ethan called home. He felt out of place, like he didn't belong in such a polished environment. But Clara was kind, making him feel at ease with her calm demeanor. "Ethan, I'm so glad you could make it today," she said as she led him into a conference room. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation, and I truly believe you have the potential to be a great addition to our team." Ethan smiled nervously, trying to hide his anxiety. "I'm just a student," he said. "I don't have much experience, but I'm a hard worker and I'm willing to learn." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly what I'm looking for," she replied. "Sometimes, experience isn't as important as the right attitude. I've seen too many people with impressive resumes who don't have the heart or dedication to follow through. You, on the other hand, seem genuine, and that's something I value more than anything." Her words made Ethan feel like maybe he did have something to offer, like maybe he wasn't as out of his depth as he had thought. The interview went smoothly, with Clara asking him about his background, his goals, and why he wanted to join the foundation. She seemed impressed with his answers, but Ethan couldn't help but feel like he was just saying the right things, not really believing it himself. After the interview, Clara stood up and extended her hand. "I'm going to be honest with you," she said. "I think you're the perfect fit for this position, and I'd love to have you on board." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected her to say that. "You're offering me the job?" he asked, almost unable to believe it. Clara smiled warmly. "Yes, I am. Welcome to the team, Ethan." The weight of her words hit him all at once. He had done it. He had made it. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt like he had a future, like he wasn't just a student struggling to make ends meet, but someone with real potential. He couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I won't let you down." As he walked out of the office, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. He had been given a chance, an opportunity to turn his life around. It was everything he had ever wanted, but at the same time, it was terrifying. What if he wasn't good enough? What if he failed? But then he remembered Clara's words. It wasn't about experience or qualifications. It was about the right attitude. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment, and realized that he was ready. He had been given the opportunity of a lifetime, and he wasn't going to let it slip away. He was going to give it everything he had. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change for Ethan. Starting at the foundation was like stepping into a whole new world. He quickly learned that this wasn't just any office job. Clara's foundation was filled with passionate, driven people who truly believed in the mission they were working toward. Ethan was assigned to a small team that focused on community outreach and fundraising, and from the very first day, he threw himself into the work with everything he had. Despite his initial doubts, he was surprised to find that he was actually good at it. He had always been a quick learner, but this job brought out a side of him that he hadn't known existed. The work was challenging, but it also gave him a sense of purpose he had never felt before. He was no longer just struggling to pay bills and survive. Now, he was contributing to something bigger than himself, something that could actually make a difference. Clara, as always, was a source of guidance and encouragement. She would check in with him regularly, offering feedback and support, and slowly, Ethan began to feel like he belonged there. He also noticed that Clara was different outside the office. She wasn't just the successful, poised woman he had met that day in the coffee shop. There was a warmth and vulnerability to her that he hadn't seen before. She would often share stories about her childhood, her struggles with her family, and the challenges of building the foundation from the ground up. Ethan found himself growing more and more drawn to her, not just as a mentor, but as a person. There was something magnetic about her. But despite the connection he felt, Ethan kept his feelings to himself. He was still trying to get used to his new life and didn't want to complicate things. That was, until one late afternoon when everything changed. Ethan was staying late at the office, working on a project for an upcoming fundraiser, when Clara walked in. The office was quiet, and the soft hum of the city outside was the only sound. She smiled at him as she entered. "You're still here?" she asked. Ethan looked up from his laptop, a little startled. "Yeah, just finishing up some things." Clara walked over and sat down across from him. There was a moment of silence before she spoke again. "Ethan, I want to thank you for everything you've done here," she said, her voice sincere. "You've really stepped up, and I'm impressed with the work you've put in. You're an invaluable member of this team." Ethan felt his cheeks flush at the compliment. "Thanks, Clara. That means a lot." She smiled again, her eyes soft. "I mean it. You've proven that you have more to offer than you probably realize." Ethan shifted in his seat, unsure of where this conversation was headed. "I'm just doing my best," he said quietly. Clara leaned forward, her tone changing slightly. "No, it's more than that," she said. "I've seen people come and go in this foundation, and you're different. You're real. And I think that's why you've been able to connect with so many people." There was something in her eyes, something deeper, that made Ethan's heart race. He wasn't sure if it was admiration or something else entirely, but he couldn't ignore the way he felt whenever she was near. Before he could say anything, Clara stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the skyline. The city was bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. Ethan watched her from across the room, feeling the tension in the air. It wasn't just the work that had changed his life, it was Clara, too. Her presence was a constant pull, something he couldn't ignore. And then, without turning around, she spoke again. "Ethan, there's something I've been meaning to tell you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure how to say this, but I think you should know." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what she was about to say, but he suddenly felt like everything had been leading to this moment. She turned to face him, her expression serious but soft. "I think I'm falling for you," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan stood there, shocked, trying to process what she had just said. He had never expected this. He had never allowed himself to think that something like this could happen. But now that the words were out in the open, everything felt different. "Clara," he began, his voice shaky. "I don't know what to say." She smiled, a faint, knowing smile. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know how I feel. I understand if you don't feel the same way. I couldn't keep it to myself anymore." Ethan stood frozen, his mind racing. He had always admired Clara, but this was unexpected. And yet, at the same time, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. He took a step toward her, his heart pounding. "Clara, I think I feel the same way." And just like that, everything shifted. The walls that Ethan had built around himself started to crumble. He wasn't just a student anymore. He was someone who had found a future, a purpose, and maybe even love. It was all happening so fast, but for the first time in his life, it felt right. The days following that moment felt like a blur for Ethan. Everything was shifting so quickly, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it all. Clara and he had shared a quiet, almost magical evening together, talking about their hopes, dreams, and the future. It was a side of Clara he had never seen before, vulnerable and open, and he couldn't help but feel a deep connection growing between them. The more time they spent together, the more Ethan realized that he was falling for her, hard. But he was still uncertain about what all of this meant. Was this just an office romance? Would it make things complicated at work? The last thing he wanted was to jeopardize his chance at this incredible opportunity. He had worked so hard to get to this point, and he didn't want to risk it for something that might not last. But every time Clara smiled at him or sent him a text, his doubts seemed to fade. She was real, and he knew that their connection was genuine. He tried to push aside his fears and enjoy the moments they had together, but the anxiety still lingered. That was, until one fateful evening, when Clara asked him to meet her at a charity gala the foundation was hosting. Ethan had been to a few events like this in the past, but none quite like this one. The gala was elegant, filled with high-profile donors and partners, and it took place in one of the city's grandest ballrooms. Ethan felt out of place as soon as he walked in. The glittering chandeliers, the polished floors, the perfectly dressed guests, everything about it screamed wealth and status. He tried to shake off his nerves, but as he stood by the entrance, his eyes kept darting around, unsure of where to go or who to talk to. He had been invited by Clara, but he felt completely out of his element. It wasn't long before Clara spotted him from across the room. She looked stunning in a sleek, black evening gown that shimmered under the lights, her hair styled perfectly, and her presence commanding. She smiled as she made her way over to him. "Ethan, you made it," she exclaimed, her voice full of warmth. He smiled, but he couldn't shake the feeling that everyone in the room was staring at him. "Yeah, I almost didn't," he admitted, laughing nervously. "This place is a little intimidating." Clara laughed too, the sound light and genuine. "Don't worry," she said, taking his arm. "You're exactly where you need to be." As they mingled through the crowd, Clara introduced him to several people from the foundation and some of their major donors. Ethan felt his confidence grow a little, but he couldn't help but notice how different their worlds were. He was just a student who had worked his way up, while these people were seasoned professionals, some of them billionaires. He couldn't help but wonder what they saw when they looked at him. Was he just another person who had somehow slipped through the cracks into their world, or was he actually someone worth investing in? His mind raced with questions until Clara leaned in, her voice low and steady. "Ethan, I want you to meet someone," she said, guiding him toward a tall man in a tailored suit. The man turned to face them as they approached, and Ethan's heart nearly stopped. He recognized the man immediately. Liam Parker, the CEO of a massive tech company, someone whose name he had heard countless times in the news. The man's reputation for being a ruthless businessman was legendary, and seeing him in person was almost overwhelming. "Liam," Clara said with a smile. "This is Ethan, one of our most promising team members." Liam extended his hand, his grip firm and confident. "Nice to meet you, Ethan," he said, his voice smooth. "Clara speaks highly of you." Ethan could barely manage a smile, his mind racing. "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Parker," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Clara had mentioned Liam in passing before, but Ethan had never imagined he would meet him like this. He felt completely out of his depth. As the evening went on, Ethan did his best to keep up with the conversations around him. Clara stayed by his side, making sure he felt included, but the unease he felt never really went away. He couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong in a place like this. But then, something surprising happened. As the night wore on, Clara and Liam shared a conversation about the future of the foundation, and Ethan couldn't help but listen in. They spoke about the challenges they faced and their hopes for the upcoming projects, but it was the way they spoke, so confidently and passionately, that made Ethan realize something important. He wasn't just some outsider in their world, he was a part of it now. Clara had invited him into this space because she believed in him, and that belief was more powerful than any self-doubt he had. As the night came to an end and Clara walked him out, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. "You did great tonight," Clara said, her voice soft. "I know it was a lot to take in, but you held your own." Ethan smiled, feeling more sure of himself than he had in a long time. "Thanks, Clara. I couldn't have done it without you." She stopped walking and turned to face him, her expression serious but warm. "Ethan, I'm glad you're here. You've become an important part of this foundation, and I'm proud of everything you've accomplished so far." The sincerity in her words made his chest tighten. For the first time, Ethan realized that he was not only building a career, he was building a future. A future with Clara, and with the foundation that was quickly becoming more than just a job to him. He had found something real, something worth fighting for. The following weeks felt like a new chapter for Ethan. His role at the foundation was no longer just a job, it was a purpose. He had started working alongside Clara and her team, diving deep into projects that aimed to help the community, and with every success, he felt his confidence grow. But as much as he thrived in his professional life, he couldn't ignore the growing feelings he had for Clara. What had started as a simple connection had blossomed into something much deeper, something real. But despite everything going well, doubts crept into Ethan's mind. The more time he spent with Clara, the more he questioned the possibility of a future with her. Their lives were so different, and sometimes, when they shared a quiet moment together, he couldn't help but wonder if their worlds would collide. Clara was a successful, powerful woman, and he was just a student who had stumbled into a world of opportunity. He loved her, but did he belong in her life? Was he worthy of the life she had worked so hard to build? These thoughts gnawed at him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his insecurities might eventually push Clara away. But Clara, as always, was patient and understanding. She never treated him as though he didn't belong, and whenever the subject of their relationship came up, she always reassured him. "Ethan," she said one evening as they sat together after a long day at the foundation, "I know you have your doubts, but I'm not asking you to be anyone other than yourself. That's all I need. And I'm glad you're here, with me." Hearing her say that calmed some of his fears, but deep down, he still wondered if he could truly fit into her world. Still, he couldn't ignore the way she made him feel, special, capable, and for the first time in a long time, hopeful. Then came a moment that changed everything. One evening, Clara invited him to a dinner with some of her closest friends and business associates. Ethan was hesitant at first, not sure he was ready for another high-profile event, but Clara insisted. "I want you there, Ethan. I want you to meet the people who are a part of my life." And so, Ethan found himself at a lavish dinner party, surrounded by powerful figures from various industries. The atmosphere was lively, but Ethan felt like an outsider. He tried to keep up with the conversation, but his nerves were getting the best of him. He wasn't used to this world. These people seemed to live in a realm far beyond anything he had ever known. Just as he was about to retreat into himself, Clara noticed. She walked over, her smile warm as always, and took his hand. "Hey," she said softly, "don't let it overwhelm you. These are just people. We're all just people." Her simple words grounded him, and for the first time that night, Ethan began to feel a little more at ease. Clara introduced him to several guests, some of whom were intrigued by his background and the work he was doing at the foundation. Ethan found himself engaging in genuine conversations, something he hadn't expected. But the most memorable moment came when Clara excused herself for a moment, leaving Ethan alone with one of her closest business partners, Liam Parker. The two men exchanged pleasantries, but the conversation quickly turned deeper, and Liam looked at Ethan with a knowing smile. "You know," Liam said, "I've been watching you closely. I see a lot of potential in you, Ethan. Clara has good instincts, and I trust her judgment." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "You've been watching me?" he asked, unsure of what Liam meant. "Not in a bad way. Don't worry," Liam said with a chuckle. "But Clara talks about you a lot. She's been impressed with how you've stepped up, especially with all the challenges the foundation is facing. You've got a good head on your shoulders." Ethan felt a sense of pride, but also a wave of discomfort. "I'm just doing my best," he said. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." Liam nodded, then leaned in slightly, his tone more serious. "Don't sell yourself short, Ethan. You're more than just a student. You have something valuable to offer, and I'm sure that's why Clara sees you as someone who can help move things forward." The conversation ended there, but the impact of Liam's words stayed with Ethan long after the dinner. For the first time, someone other than Clara had seen the potential in him, and it made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he was ready to step up to the plate. Maybe he didn't need to feel like an outsider in Clara's world after all. The next morning, as he walked into the office with renewed confidence, Ethan realized that his future was not something he had to fear. It was something he could shape, something he could build. And with Clara by his side, he knew he could face whatever came next. The next few months brought even more growth for Ethan, both personally and professionally. The sense of purpose that had been missing from his life for so long now filled every corner of his days. The foundation had become more than just a job to him. It was a mission, a place where he felt truly valued. Clara's belief in him had not only given him a new opportunity, but had also sparked a confidence he had never known before. He felt himself stepping into his role, growing into the person he had always wanted to be. But even as things seemed to be falling into place, Ethan still struggled with his inner doubts. He could no longer deny the feelings he had for Clara, and yet, he still couldn't shake the fear that somehow, their worlds were too different. Every time he looked at her, he saw someone who had everything: success, wealth, and a life full of connections. He was still just a student, someone who had stumbled into this world by chance. What could he possibly offer her? It was a question that gnawed at him every time they spent time together. Clara, however, seemed to sense his inner turmoil. She was always there to support him, to listen when he needed to talk, but she also made it clear that she didn't care about his background or his insecurities. "Ethan," she said to him one night, after another successful event at the foundation, "I know you're not used to this world, but that doesn't matter to me. What matters is who you are, not where you come from. You've proven that already." Her words comforted him, but they didn't fully ease his anxiety. He still felt like he was pretending to fit in, like any moment someone would figure out that he didn't belong. It was during one of those moments of doubt, late at night in the office, when Ethan got an unexpected call. It was from a former classmate, someone he hadn't spoken to in a long time. "Ethan, hey, I have a question for you. You still looking for work, right?" Ethan paused for a moment, unsure of where this conversation was going. Yeah, he replied. "I'm actually working at the foundation now, but I'm always open to hearing about new opportunities." "Well," the classmate continued, "I have a friend who's a big deal in tech, and they're looking for someone to help with some projects. It's a big opportunity, and I thought of you." Ethan felt a surge of uncertainty flood through him. "I'm not really looking to switch jobs," he said slowly. "I'm happy where I am." The line was quiet for a moment before the classmate spoke again. "Ethan, I get it, but this is huge. This could change everything for you. The kind of connections you'd make, the experience." Ethan's mind raced. He had just started to feel like he was gaining some footing at the foundation. Was he ready to leave it all behind? Would Clara understand if he took this opportunity? He knew how much she valued the work they were doing, and he wasn't sure how she would feel about him taking a different path. The conversation ended with a promise to think it over, but Ethan couldn't sleep that night. He spent hours lying awake, weighing his options. On one hand, the offer was tempting. It was everything he had dreamed of: high-profile connections, incredible experience, the chance to make a name for himself. But on the other hand, it felt like a betrayal. He had worked so hard to build something meaningful with Clara and the foundation, and walking away from that felt wrong. He knew deep down that he needed to make the right decision for himself, but the pressure was overwhelming. It wasn't long before Clara noticed that something was bothering him. They had been spending more time together recently, and she could tell that he was distracted. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet of her apartment, she finally asked, "Ethan, what's going on? I can tell something's bothering you. You've been so distant lately." Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "It's just, there's this opportunity, and I'm not sure what to do. It could be life-changing, but I don't want to leave everything I've worked for here." Clara's gaze softened, and she reached out, taking his hand in hers. "You don't have to make this decision alone," she said quietly. "I'm here for you, no matter what you choose. But whatever you decide, don't let fear hold you back. You deserve to chase your dreams, Ethan. Don't ever forget that." Her words hit him like a wave, washing away the fear and uncertainty he had been carrying for so long. He looked at her, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Clara had always believed in him, and now, more than ever, he knew he had to believe in himself. The next morning, Ethan made his decision. He turned down the offer, choosing to stay with the foundation and continue the work that had already changed his life. As he walked into the office that day, a weight lifted off his shoulders. He had made the right choice. And when he saw Clara later that afternoon, he smiled, feeling more confident than ever before. "I chose to stay," he told her. "This is where I belong." Clara's smile was all the confirmation he needed. "I knew you would," she said, her eyes shining. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt at peace with his future. He had found his place, and with Clara by his side, he knew he was ready for whatever came next. Months passed, and Ethan's life continued to evolve in ways he never expected. The decision to stay at the foundation felt like a turning point, a moment when everything finally aligned. Every day, he felt more and more like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Clara continued to be a guiding force in his life, and their bond grew stronger with each passing week. Their relationship had become something special, built on trust, respect, and shared goals. Ethan was no longer the unsure student who had stumbled into this world. He had grown into a confident, capable person, both in his work and in his personal life. But as time went on, a new challenge arose, one that Ethan had not anticipated. The foundation was facing a critical financial situation. Despite their success, the donations had begun to slow, and there was increasing pressure to secure more funding. Clara, usually calm and composed, had begun to show signs of stress, and Ethan could see how much the weight of it all was affecting her. She had always been the rock of the foundation, the driving force behind everything they did, but now, even she seemed uncertain. One evening, after another long day of meetings and phone calls, Clara called Ethan to her office. He could tell by the look on her face that something was wrong. "Ethan," she began, her voice a little tired. "We need to talk." Ethan's stomach tightened. He sat down across from her, waiting for her to continue. "I don't know what to do anymore," she said, her voice faltering slightly. "The foundation is in real trouble. We're not going to make it through this if we don't find a way to secure new funding, and soon." Ethan felt a pang of worry. The foundation had become more than just a job to him. It was a part of his identity, something he believed in. "What can we do?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Clara looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've tried everything, but nothing seems to be working. I'm afraid we're running out of time." Ethan could see the weight of her words, and for the first time, he saw the vulnerability in her that she had always hidden so well. It was a side of Clara he hadn't seen before, and it made his heart ache. He couldn't bear the thought of the foundation failing, of Clara losing everything she had worked so hard for. He stood up, his decision already made. "We're not going to let this happen," he said, his voice steady and determined. Clara looked up at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "We're going to fight for this, together. We'll find a way to make it work. You don't have to do this alone." Clara's eyes softened, and for a moment, she seemed almost relieved. "I don't know what I would do without you," she said quietly. "You've become such an important part of this foundation, and I'm so grateful for everything you've done." Ethan's heart swelled at her words, and he realized, in that moment, that this was more than just a job for him. This was his life, his future, and he would do whatever it took to make sure Clara's dream and the foundation's mission didn't end. Over the next few weeks, Ethan threw himself into the challenge. He worked tirelessly with Clara and the team to come up with new fundraising strategies, reaching out to potential donors, and organizing events to bring in much-needed funds. It was exhausting, but with each small victory, his belief in their mission grew stronger. And then, just when it seemed like they were running out of time, an unexpected opportunity came their way. A wealthy philanthropist who had been following the foundation's work reached out to Clara, offering a significant donation to help them continue their projects. It was the breakthrough they had been desperately waiting for. The relief that washed over Clara was palpable, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe. "We did it," she said, her voice full of emotion. "We really did it." Ethan stood beside her, feeling a sense of pride he had never known before. This wasn't just her victory, it was theirs. They had fought together, and they had won. As they celebrated the success, Clara turned to Ethan, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, her voice full of gratitude. Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with emotion. "You don't have to thank me," he replied softly. "I believe in what we're doing here, and I believe in you." It was in that moment, standing together in the glow of their success, that Ethan realized just how far he had come. He wasn't the same uncertain student who had walked into the foundation months ago. He was a leader, someone who had found his place in the world, and someone who had found his place by Clara's side. And as they moved forward, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger than ever. The foundation's future was no longer uncertain. With the generous donation they had received, Clara and Ethan were able to not only stabilize the foundation's finances, but also expand its reach in ways they had only dreamed of. The work they were doing was more impactful than ever, and Ethan couldn't help but feel proud of what they had achieved together. The connection between him and Clara had deepened, and their bond was stronger than ever. They had gone through challenges, and those challenges had only made them more resilient, both in their work and in their relationship. As the months passed, Ethan's role at the foundation grew. Clara trusted him with more responsibilities, and he continued to prove himself capable, helping to bring in new partnerships, develop creative strategies, and lead important initiatives. But what made the work so fulfilling wasn't just the professional success. It was the chance to make a real difference in people's lives. Ethan had always dreamed of being part of something bigger than himself, and now he was. And through it all, Clara remained by his side, a constant source of support, inspiration, and love. One evening, after a long day of meetings and events, Clara invited Ethan to dinner at one of their favorite restaurants. The atmosphere was intimate and warm, a stark contrast to the busy, high-stress world they had both been living in. As they sat across from each other, enjoying the quiet moment, Clara looked at Ethan with a smile that spoke volumes. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft and filled with warmth, "about everything we've accomplished and about everything we've been through. You've been my partner in every sense of the word, Ethan. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Ethan felt a rush of gratitude at her words, but also a deep sense of pride. They had truly done this together. "It's been an amazing journey," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I never imagined I'd be here, doing what I love with someone like you by my side." Clara's eyes sparkled, and she reached across the table to take his hand. "You've always been more than capable," she said. "From the moment we met, I knew there was something special about you. You just needed to believe in yourself the way I believe in you." Ethan smiled, squeezing her hand. "I'm starting to believe in myself, Clara, but I also believe in us, in what we're building here. And I know this is just the beginning." Clara leaned in slightly, her voice lower, more serious now. "Ethan," she said, her eyes locking with his, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you. Something I've been thinking about for a while." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The intensity in her voice made him wonder what she was about to say. "What is it?" he asked, his mind racing. Clara took a deep breath, then slowly let it out. "I've spent my whole life building this foundation, this dream. But now, I realize that it's not just about the work. It's about who I get to share it with. And I want to share it with you. Not just as a colleague or a partner in the foundation, but as someone I want to spend my life with. Ethan, will you marry me?" Time seemed to stand still as Ethan processed her words. The question hung in the air between them, and he felt a mix of emotions flooding his heart. He had known for a long time how much he loved Clara, how deeply he cared for her. But this was different. This was a life-changing moment, and as he looked into her eyes, he knew the answer without a doubt. "Yes," he said, his voice full of emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Clara's face lit up, a smile spreading across her face as she reached out to embrace him. The warmth of her hug, the joy of the moment, filled Ethan with an overwhelming sense of happiness. This was the moment he had been waiting for, and it felt more perfect than he could have ever imagined. They spent the rest of the evening talking about their future, about the dreams they still had yet to achieve, and about the life they would build together. For Ethan, this moment was the culmination of everything he had worked for, his career, his growth, and, most importantly, his love for Clara. As they left the restaurant that night, hand in hand, Ethan couldn't help but smile. He had found his place in the world, not only at the foundation but beside Clara. They had started as two people from different worlds, but now, they were building something extraordinary together. And as he looked at Clara, he knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful journey, one that would be filled with love, success, and endless possibilities.